Everyone, and welcome to Camp Literature League. My name is Chad Horner. Today I will be talking about Katherine Paterson's famous children's fiction novel titled Bridge to Terabithia. But before I do, I would like to pose a question. Have any of you ever been to an enchanted land filled with enemies and monsters in which you are the ruler? Well, Jess Aarons has. Bridge to Terabithia is a children's fiction novel written by Katherine Paterson and is actually based off of her real-life experiences. It tells the story of Jess Aarons, a 10-year-old kid who was the fastest kid in 5th grade in the boys' track races, that is, until he meets Leslie Burke, who outpaced him. Leslie's family were wealthy city dwellers, but they had moved to a farm in order to rethink their priorities, namely money. Leslie's unique style promoted teasing from her fellow classmates, but in spite of this, Jess Aarons became best friends with Leslie Burke. They invented a secret land in the forest and named it Terabithia. Jess, prior to meeting Leslie, had experienced and expressed great artistic talent, but his family were never supportive of this, nor were his teachers, except Miss Edmonds, who referred to him as the proverbial diamond in the rough. Miss Edmonds was very fond of Jess Aarons and his unique talent. After meeting Leslie, he was encouraged in his unique abilities and sense of humour. The two built castles and fortresses, fighting off imaginary foes. Leslie was Queen of Terabithia and Jess Aarons was King. To cross over into their kingdom, they swung on a crab-apple tree rope at a brook, which had been there for quite a while. Their kingdom was a world all their own, where battles were fought, prayers were spoken, and where magic really did happen. And the fun wasn't confined to Terabithia alone. It even extended to matters such as the painting of Burke's room a brilliant gold, racing each other, milking. Jess and Leslie were the best of friends. They even dealt with issues relating to school and the bullies that they encountered, such as Janice Avery, who Jess referred to as the female gorilla, and also other bullies such as Wilma Dean and Bobby Sue Henshaw. So together they were a fighting force for good. Jess's 6-year-old little sister Maybelle liked to tag along, once following Jess and Leslie to Terabithia undetected. Jess hated her company, however, but after Leslie bribed her with some toys, Maybelle became more submissive. In Terabithia, Jess and Leslie built a huge fort, storing snacks and tools inside. When we reach chapter 8, it is Easter Sunday. Leslie goes to church with Jess's family. The preacher talks about the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and it fired up a discussion on the ride home. Upon finding that Leslie was not a Christian believer, Maybelle exclaimed in horror, "But you have to believe in the Bible, otherwise God'll damn you to hell when you die." So this reflects the preaching of the preacher, the hell, fire and brimstone preaching. But, however, Leslie, wildly surprised, asked Jess where Maybelle found that out. Jess, embarrassed, replied that it was in the Bible. Maybelle persisted, "But Leslie, what if you die? What's going to happen if you die?" When Christmas came, Leslie gave Jess a beautiful paint set, knowing that he loved painting and he loved art in general. In return, Jess gave Leslie a puppy, a black and brown puppy with lovely brown eyes. It was called Prince Terrian, who was to be later known as the Jester and Guardian of Terabithia. Then we move on to chapter 10. The rain season came, and the river in Terabithia was unusually high. Early one morning, Jess thought about going to Terabithia, but he felt an unusual cold fear about it, so he refrained from going to Terabithia. Miss Edmonds, Jess's beloved music teacher, called that morning to invite Jess to an art museum down in Washington. Jess was in love with her. Not romantic love, but a love that was real and deep. His heart skipped a beat when she invited him. He briefly thought of inviting Leslie too, but he quickly decided not to. He wanted this to be a time for just the two of them, together. Knowing he needed to get permission first, he woke up his mother, Mrs. Irons, just a little, and made his request. She gave him a slight mumble, turning over in bed, and straight away he raced to the phone again to confirm to Miss Edmonds that he was permitted to go. So here we have a wonderful demonstration of the relationship that Miss Edmonds had with Jess Irons. Jess Irons and Miss Edmonds had a wonderful time at the museum. Jess really liked Miss Edmonds. He considered that her voice squished him inside and made him feel good, and that he liked her, and in return she liked him as well. So when they got back, they had a wonderful time at the museum, and it was sunset already, but something was different, because when Jess got inside the house, though, he immediately realized something was terribly wrong. His family were there, but not moving, frozen in the living room. Then his family broke the terrible news. The old rope Jess and Leslie had used to cross the deep, rocky river had snapped. Leslie had gone alone that morning into Terabithia, but the rope had snapped. She had fallen, hitting her head on a rock, and drowned. Jess refused to believe this. Maybelle's words flashed through his head. But Leslie, what if you die? He ran to Terabithia and back again. The next morning in chapter 12, he went to the Burkes' house with his parents. In a sort of daze, he found out that Leslie had been cremated and the ashes were being taken back to her first home in Pennsylvania. The time passed in a blur. The next day he took out all the paper and paint Leslie had bought him and hurled them into the river. Here we see that he was very shocked and in a state of disbelief regarding Leslie Burke's death. In chapter 13, as time passed, he began to go back to Terabithia. A large branch had fallen across the river. Maybelle followed him one day, and after nearly falling into the river herself, Jess borrowed some lumber from the Burkeses. Jess was intending to build his own bridge to Terabithia. He set out to work constructing this unique and wonderful bridge that would lead into paradise, that would lead into his kingdom. Finally, one day, Jess invited Maybelle, his little sister, to come see a surprise he had made. He explained to Maybelle the concept of Terabithia, then put flowers into her hair, leading her across the bridge into Terabithia as queen and Jess as king. I think that the title of the book, Bridge to Terabithia, is highly symbolic. Of course it refers to the bridge Jess made across the river to allow safe entrance into Terabithia, the bridge that, if it had been placed across the brook when Jess and Leslie played there, might have prevented Leslie's death. But it is more than that. It is also referring to the bridge Jess made into his heart. The bridge that let his adoring little sister gain safe entrance. Before Leslie's death, he made no time to really include Maybelle. In fact, he excluded her. She felt left out from their play, prohibited to follow or go into Terabithia. After Leslie's death, however, a door closed in Jess's heart, but this also resulted in a new one opening. He realized that he needed to love and appreciate his little sister while he had her, even if she was younger and couldn't play as imaginatively as Leslie could. This is what promoted him to build two bridges, one actually to Terabithia and the other to his own heart. From the tragedy arose a new relationship. From misery and grief arose love and companionship. This is one of my favourite books for several reasons. The magic, the enthralling fantasy that Leslie spun from an old forest is enchanting to me. Her amazing creativity and her brilliant imagination make the book come alive in a special way. Also, the strong relationship created from mockery and teasing makes this book worth reading. Jess and Leslie's strong bond, despite trials and even though death happened, is quite incredible. This book is filled with hope. In a world full of darkness and misery, trials and tribulations, it shines through and lets the readers know that there is still hope at the end of the tunnel. True friendship is an unbreakable bond, filled with love and joy and patience for one another. And I also love the book for the relationships. Jess's inclusion of Maybelle after the tragedy is so full of hope and life. I highly recommend Bridge to Terabithia to anyone of any age for the incredible messages it contains within it. It is a highly engaging story and one that is worth reading more and more than once, because every time this book reveals a secret of the human imagination and the love of companionship for one another, and reveals that we are all in this together, in this human experience called life. Thank you very much for listening to my book review. I've enjoyed presenting this material in a way that makes the book more interesting, and hopefully you will take the time to read this book. This video has been made possible with the collaboration of Rachel, my LibriVox friend. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.